Today we begin a unit on Photoshop. It's a lot like Fireworks, but it's a more versatile tool. It's a little more complicated, but the basic principles apply no matter what tools you're using. In this presentation, I'm going to be showing you in video and using the PowerPoint that's available to you. The PowerPoint will always be there if you don't want to go through the whole video. The objective today is to create a line drawing. You're not going to make it up. There's a transparency layer and a photograph that makes this realistic. I want you to focus on how you use the line drawing tools and brush. Some basic terminology. The brush tool is right here. Looks very familiar to other tool palettes you've seen. There's a shortcut for this. It's the letter B. No other keys, just B. There's an options window at the top. This has all the controls you need. It's like the properties window in Fireworks. Things are in a little different place. Types of brush, width of brush. Opacity is how transparent the brush is. Flow is how hard it works, how much ink flows if it were using a spray brush tool. There's also a brush history tool. Don't use it. It's not what we're using. It's easy to confuse. Just avoid that. We want the one on top, the brush tool. Okay, today you're going to create a new file in Photoshop. Photoshop is down in your dock. It's in a different place than mine, but it's blue and it says PS. Make a new file and call it Line Drawing Rows and set it just like this. Size is 1024 by 768 and the resolution 72. That's good enough for the web here. And we'll say OK. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going over to Photoshop and I'm making a new file. I'm going to call it Line Drawing Rows, Pixels, 1024 by 768 and resolution of 72. You don't need to worry about the rest of the settings for now. So I have over here on the left my tools. If I want to make it one long line, I just click right up here. If I want to make it a double window, which I think is easier to see, just click again. Here's my options across the top. Once I've selected a brush tool, I can change how it works up here. The first thing I'd recommend is turn the flow down, maybe to 50%. Leave the opacity for this project at 100. Okay. By the way, I'm changing these windows by doing Command-Tab. I don't want you hiding windows anymore. I want you to tab from one window to the next. Okay, there's also some workspace settings I want you to set. You can get more involved later, but for now this is a good starting point. You'll go up to the window and workspace. I want you to turn on color, layers, options, and tools, and web design. That's all you need. Here's how you do it. Windows, workspace, I've already chosen those. And the workspace, select web design. Okay, simple enough. Back to the PowerPoint. Now we're going to add a photograph layer that you can use for tracing. In Photoshop, you don't import, you place. This is much better than copying and pasting too. There's reasons for this I'll get into later. So on your desktop, you will find a file named Rows1 JPEG. Going to go back to Photoshop, File, Place. And just like importing in Photoshop in Fireworks, you find the file. This one's on my desktop. Click Place, and it puts it right on there. Now, when you've got this X in the middle, it's adjustable. You can change things. You can grab the corners. If you hold Shift, it won't distort. You can move it around. Get a nice composition. Try to keep the rule of thirds. I think this should not be down in the center. It should be up above the center along a thirds line right here. When you like it, you hit Enter, and it's locked. Now you've got a layer. There's the line drawing layer, and there's the background. You're going to put the line drawing layer on the bottom. Oops, better unlock that. Oh, that's there for good. Okay, never mind. Go back to the directions. Okay, we placed the image. When we hit Enter, it was set. Now we have layers. We have the background layer that's permanent. We're going to lock the rows layer, and we're going to add a new layer. Select the rose layer and lock. Okay. Now we're going to add a new layer. It's right here. If you have any doubt, hold your cursor still. It will tell you. Okay. Now we're going to trace. We're going to trace the lines of the rose. We're not going to copy them. We're going to trace them and decide what are the most essential elements. I want your brush set to 9 or 10 pixels. You need a light touch, and you get to make mistakes and fix them. Here's how. So I'm on this layer. The rose layer is locked. I can't mess it up. I choose brush. It's at 9 pixels right now. You can always type in a value. I'm going to put it at 10. And I'm going to choose the most important line here with this one. It doesn't have to be exact. And if I don't like it, I can undo. But you only get one undo in Photoshop. Light touch. I'm barely touching the page. Here's something you can do to make it easier to see too. I'm taking the line drawing rose layer, and I'm going to unlock it for this. I'm going to change the opacity so I can see my lines more clearly. I want to still be able to see the rose, but not as strongly. Now go back to the rose layer and lock it. Go back to layer 1 to draw. So I'm going to start here. It's not an exact copy, it's the essential lines. I can't draw every one of these lines, but this is a big line here. So I'm going to do that as best I can. Copy a couple of these. You can go really, really light. And if you wonder how it looks, you can always hide a layer. That's what we've drawn so far. Now, you can do bigger, bolder lines. If you push hard, it goes with a dark line. If you push very light, you get a very light line. So you have to make some decisions in this rose. What are the most important lines? Do you need every piece in here? That looks terrible there, doesn't it? Could I use an eraser? Absolutely. Okay. Back to the brush. If you have any doubt, hide it. Get a sense of what it looks like. I'm not going to draw all these lines in here. That was a terrible one. I'll undo it. I've also seen students do this to get good lines. They make one smooth line. If they don't like it, they undo. If they do like it, they keep it. And save frequently. Ignore that message. Continue with this. You have a lot of time to do this. This is a new tool. I want you to play with it and experiment. Get used to the harder you push, the darker the line you get. The lighter you push, the finer the line. This should take a really, really light touch. If you do a layer and it looks kind of okay, but you want to try again, add a new layer, hide the old one. Okay. Then you can draw all over again. If you don't like the second one, you hide it and show the first one. So you have the invisibility tools, you have the locking tools, you have a brush tool, and you have about an hour and a half to make the best line drawing you can that makes a convincing rose. These reminders are in the Photoshop. Light touch is everything.